The cosmic side of the Marvel Universe is this grand, inspiring place full of the strongest heroes you can possibly imagine, which is great and all, but let's not forget the flip side. It's also jam-packed with powerful villains who threaten the very existence of everything all the time. But who do you think is the most powerful cosmic villain out there?
Very well.
The Beyonder? Galactus? Knull? Someone else? Well, I'm talking about a lot of them in this video, so let's get started right now. There's one cosmic villain that I think is just the best of the best, not only because of vastly superior cosmic power, but also because of future potential in the MCU.
Careful what you wish for.
I'm talking about the Beyonder, and he's part of a race of beings who exist outside the multiverse. Well, through some classic comic shenanigans, Beyonder wound up in our universe and has caused a great amount of chaos, the most famous being Secret Wars. Now, there have been a few Secret Wars over the years. The first one had the Beyonder just kinda curious about what it means to desire something, so he did what any omnipotent and logical person would do and decided to have a little fun with it. He took heroes and villains from Earth, put them on a planet called Battle World, and forced them to fight it out. The next Secret Wars happened when Beyonder still wanted to get a taste of what humanity was all about and decided to disguise himself on Earth for a bit. Both of these instances just overall prove that Beyonder is so far above a level of human comprehension that it's incredibly dangerous for us here on Earth. He uses us like playthings a lot of the time, which means we're expendable. I started with the Beyonder because I think he has amazing potential in the MCU. A Secret Wars movie might be the fun one-off battle royale that I think the MCU needs right now. Or you know what I also think? He'd make a great antagonist to the Watcher in season 2 of What If.
I'm the greatest intelligence!
Yeah, you could guess Galactus was going to be high on this list. He's Galactus, the devourer of worlds. When most people are hungry, they eat a snack from the fridge, but Galactus just lines up an entire planet and takes a huge bite. And yes, I know that in the early days, it was easy to say that Galactus was just this simple villain, but over the years, different writers and story arcs have fleshed out the cosmic villain and made him one of the most fascinating characters around. His backstory involves him being the sole survivor of the previous universe before the cycle caused everything to reset and repeat. While his cosmos were reaching a natural endpoint, the sentience of the multiverse merged with the future Galactus so that they would both survive the rebirth, and voila! Now Galactus started out as an antagonist, he now sort of feels like a cosmic equalizer, bringing balance to the universe in the only way he knows how. So before Kang the Conqueror makes his presence known, there was a lot of debate over whether Galactus was going to be the next big bad of the MCU. I liked Galactus as the big threat because not only is Galactus awesome, but that way you could put the new Fantastic Four front and center, as traditionally Galactus and the Fantastic Four have quite the history together. But also my question is, how would you introduce Galactus? I had the theory that the Eternals movie was going to hint at Galactus and make him a Celestial just to make things easier for the general audiences. But since they didn't do that, things are still up in the air.
Regrettably.
Would you have Galactus in our universe or make him come from a different universe to better explain where he's been all this time? Look, Thanos may not be a cosmic entity with natural godlike powers, but he's still one of the most dangerous cosmic villains of all time. He's just a guy who in the comics is really trying to impress his true love, and in the movies he's just a guy who really wants to bring balance to the universe. The key aspect about Thanos is that he has the determination and the willpower to never give up on whatever pursuit he's after. He's strong, intelligent, and has spent years gathering different forces to accomplish his goals. I think he's either teamed up or fought most of the other cosmic entities on this list, which is pretty impressive. Thanos is mainly known for two things. One, his obsession with Lady Death, which, I mean, Thanos, maybe you should ease up on that a bit. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in wooing members of the opposite sex, but every woman I know wouldn't want me to destroy the whole galaxy for them. Maybe just take Lady Death to the movies or something. Or out to eat. I bet Death likes Italian food.
I'm in love.
Anyways, the other thing he's known for is his quest to collect the Infinity Gems and use the Infinity Gauntlet, which practically destroys everything. I really do commend Thanos-centric comics now because it's hard when the original Infinity Saga in the comics is so iconic to move on from that and still make the villain interesting. But writers have crafted some amazing Thanos stories that prove why he continues to be one of the best bad guys in the Marvel Universe. I love giant flaming cosmic entities hurtling through space, willing to possess or take control of any vessel they choose and able to cause unfathomable damage if they desire. That's why the Phoenix Force is so much fun. It's one of the most dangerous forces ever. It represents a whole range of things like life that has not been born yet, creation, and destruction. It's been called the fire in which all things were born if you were looking for a general age for it. The biggest storyline with the Phoenix Force is obviously the Dark Phoenix Saga. So there the Phoenix Force was, just hanging out, right? When it sensed a mind of a human transcending the physical realm, you know, like minds do. Then the Phoenix Force moseyed on over and found Jean Grey, and the rest is relatively history. There was a ton of destruction, and a whole star in the Dabari system was completely devoured by this insatiable creature. So yeah, the Phoenix Force can be bad news. So with every mention of the Phoenix Force, I like to discuss just where exactly the Phoenix Force can show up next. Its live action track record isn't great. It's somehow 0 for 2, which is just kind of insane. How do you mess up something the first time, then try again but make all new mistakes with it so it's possibly somehow worse? That's the real mystery. So in the MCU, I think the Phoenix Force should make an appearance. But maybe it needs a bit of an introduction. In the comics, it has ties with Thor and Mighty Thor, so maybe those two can encounter it and witness it in all its terrifying, slightly villainous glory? Magus is a character that's a little hard to explain. Like, the simple version is that Magus is the evil future version of Adam Warlock, which is straightforward, but then you get into the timeline stuff, and it all gets a bit wobbly, and I don't necessarily have time for that. But the gist is that Magus is an incredibly powerful villain. Now, in the comics, Magus's most important storyline happens in Infinity War with Adam Warlock, which begs the question on what the MCU actually has planned for both Magus and Adam. We know Adam is going to play a big part in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, played by the dorky kid from We're the Millers. Okay, that's unfair.
Oh my god! I'm gonna die.
Will Poulter is Jax now. Anyways, what will Adam's story be after Thanos has come and gone? My guess would be that the Guardians will have to deal with Adam either potentially turning into the evil Magus or keeping him on the side of good. There's a storyline like this in the comics, so I'm hoping the third movie follows suit. It feels like there's a god for every occasion in the Marvel Universe, and one of the scariest ones would be Amatsu Mikaboshi. I mean, he's the god of evil and chaos. What do you expect? He's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies. And he's really not technically a god per se. He's an offshoot of the cosmic entity Oblivion, so you know he means business. If I had to pick the best storylines that the MCU could adapt to bring this villain to live action, the first that comes to mind is Chaos War. Basically, Amatsu Mikaboshi has this army of enslaved deities and uses it to slowly make his way to Earth. I can't really get into his skill sets, but just imagine what the embodiment of darkness would be and you get the general gist. Amatsu Mikaboshi deals in the realms of gods, so in my head, I could see a situation where Thor Love and Thunder can open the door on all these different types of gods in the MCU, then a Thor 5 could adapt Chaos War. Man, when you stack all these villains up, you see how similar they are. So I just talked about Amatsu Mikaboshi being a primordial being of darkness, but there's also Knull, who's known as the god of darkness, who was born in the primordial void between the 6th and 7th cosmos. Man, how does the Marvel Universe keep all these things straight? Anyways, Knull is most famous for being the creator of the symbiotes. He has a powerful symbiote sword called the Necro Sword, which was infused with celestial power, and when Knull was unleashed from his long imprisonment, you can bet he almost brought the whole Marvel Universe to its knees. If I were a betting man, I'd imagine Knull was being saved for the inevitable Venom 3, but also that Necro Sword I mentioned, it actually went on to become Gorr the God Butcher's for a bit and was the main source of his power. If the MCU wanted to adapt that properly, all the pieces are right there. Molecule Man is arguably one of the strongest beings on this list, and the only reason he's not higher is because he's not exactly a full-on villain anymore. I mean, he was in the beginning. Early days of comics had Molecule Man fight the Avengers and the Fantastic Four from time to time. The ability to manipulate matter turned out to be a great engaging power, but I think people soon realized that if you really could manipulate matter willy-nilly, then you're one of the most powerful people in existence. The Secret Wars storylines over the years have really mellowed him out. Like, Sure, he doesn't exactly set out to save the day, but in the early days, he kind of just wanted to chill with his girlfriend. He has a strong connection to the Beyonder, which makes sense given where Molecule Man's power comes from. My advice would be to never try to fight Molecule Man unless you maybe have a cheeseburger in your pocket. Just ask Miles Morales. Okay, so there are big overarching bad guys for the MCU, then there are one movie bad guys. And with Kang the Conqueror seemingly taking the role of overarching big bad for the MCU over the next few movies, we need a serious villain who can do some serious damage, and then be soundly beaten by the time the credits roll. That's where Annihilus comes into play. Annihilus is a great sorta cosmic baddie. He doesn't actually come from space, but rather he's the tyrant that rules over the pocket dimension known as the Negative Zone. But if you look at the Annihilation storyline, which sees Annihilus escape to our universe, then lead an armada of his forces to try to capture the power cosmic, it kind of all makes sense. You see, Annihilus is a straightforward bad guy. He wants to be uber powerful so he won't die. Great, that's a motive I can get behind. Annihilus is also another one of those villains who could be used to set up the Fantastic Four in the MCU. So we all know that Galactus loves his heralds, right? There are great ways to nerf Galactus's power since he can send a proxy for people to deal with a bit rather than Galactus just showing up and taking a huge bite out of planet Earth. And while Silver Surfer is the most famous herald, what about his very first herald? That would be the Fallen One, a fascinating cosmic villain. So all heralds now are imbued with the power cosmic to make them powerful, but the Fallen One was instead fused with dark energy instead and therefore could control black matter. But the Fallen One went a little too crazy, and although he never quite defeated Galactus, he still is someone you don't want as your enemy. Ego the Living Planet is a character we've already seen in the MCU, and my question is, how do you rank him in terms of power? He is a living planet after all, how do you top that? Though the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 movie notably made him a Celestial, which is kind of weird now given all the Celestials we've seen so far in the MCU recently. But all that aside, Ego is a wonderful character, but he wasn't always this way. He was actually a mortal man once who was involved in a freak accident that fused him with all the things on his planet, and thus Ego was born. You just don't get the same type of villain here on Earth, you know? Imagine traveling in a spaceship through the cosmos and all of a sudden you see a planet-sized face staring at you? Excuse me, that would be terrifying. Juggernaut is one of the strongest villains ever in terms of pure strength.
I'm gonna rip you in half now.
But it's the deity behind him that makes him so fascinating. Cyttorak is an ancient cosmic deity that's been worshipped and called both a demon and a god. Cyttorak created the Crimson Gem, which could be used to turn whoever touched it into Juggernaut. Now here's a crazy idea. Why not introduce Cyttorak in something like Moon Knight Season 2? We've just scratched the surface when it comes to Khonshu's relationship with all the personalities, so why couldn't you have a parallel villainous storyline where Cyttorak has his avatar and Khonshu has his own? I'd pay to see that, wouldn't you? So High Evolutionary is now a great cosmic villain, but his roots are on Earth. Born Herbert Windham, he was smart enough to experiment on his genetics and then evolved into one of the smartest beings in the universe. He upgraded from Earth and moved on to bigger and better things. High Evolutionary also created the New Men, which were humanoid animal creatures that the villain thought were better than normal humans. And doesn't this all sound like a great setup for a new Guardians of the Galaxy movie? Well, it is. Set photos have practically confirmed that Counterworld will be included, which means High Evolutionary. Celestials are unique beings. They're all powerful, but in the comics, they're not as powerful as almost any other person on this list. Yes, the Celestials have been involved in some crazy storylines throughout the years, but they never really make a big evil move for the sake of being evil. Makes me think of the MCU when a giant Celestial almost cracked through the surface and split Earth in two like an egg. Yeah, that's pretty villainous, right? Celestials are these bright, colorful entities in Marvel Comics, and I remember a time where Tony Stark once created a Celestial stopping armor, which was just awe-inspiring. Sure, the armor broke immediately, but I guess it's the thought that counts. Now, Gorr the God Butcher barely made this list. Yes, he's sorta a cosmic character as he travels around looking for gods to kill, but he still feels very confined to one planet type of vibe. As already mentioned before, he wields the best weapon imaginable, the Necro Sword in all of its glory, and he spent many a years and a lot of battles using it to continue his crusade of butchering all sorts of gods left and right. With Thor 4 coming up, I now have to wonder how faithfully they'll adapt the character. Do you think he has the potential to go down as one of the best MCU villains ever? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. Could any of these cosmic villains team up with a future big bad down the line? Kang is going to need some allies in our universe to do some conquering, and it would be wise of him to get someone like Galactus or someone on his side. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR.